Hello everyone, welcome. In this video, we will walk through the creation of a simple Hello World app with some event handling and tests. First, we'll create a new project and select the empty views activity and click Next. Name your project. I'll name mine Hello World. Next, we'll select Java as a language, and you can either leave the minimum SDK as is or match it to your assignment or tutorial's instructions. In this case, the minimum SDK for this walkthrough will be API 33 or Tiramisu. Make sure Groovy DSL is selected as the build configuration language and click Finish. Android Studio will generate a variety of files for your project. This part may take a few seconds. If we expand our source files under the res directory, you'll see the drawable, layout, values, XML, and bitmap directories. Expanding the layout folder will give us the activity main XML file. If you expand the others, you'll see the other XML resources available to us, such as global strings, colors, and the icons. If you expand the first subfolder under Java, you'll see the corresponding main activity Java file. If we double-click on the activity main XML, we'll see a singular string in the text view at the center of the screen that says Hello World. We should be able to just run our Android virtual devices to see this, so I'll go ahead and run my Pixel 8 Pro AVD, and sure enough, here is that same string. Let's go ahead and change this up so that when we enter a name and click on a button, that we present a greeting to the user with the string input on the screen. In this walkthrough, I won't go into layouts, so we'll just move the original string up top, drag over a plain text input, a button, and another text view. Just gonna go ahead and place some text for the button and the text views. Now you're wondering, why would we do it this way when we can put it in strings XML? So I'm just going to go ahead and do a copy paste of this entry right here. Add one for user instructions. And then add one for the button. Next, we'll go back to the layout editor, and within our text attributes, we'll reference the strings that we've defined instead. You'll know that they are properly set once you see the @string sequence here within the attribute entry. I'm going to take a brief pause here to deal with these missing constraints in the activity main XML file. We can do this by going up a bit to the menu option, Infer Constraints, and Android Studio will handle this for us in this case. Another issue, as we can see here, is the touch target size being too small for the name plain text input. We can address this by increasing the size just a tad. All right, all set here. Let's go back to the remaining screen components. Now when we check out the file problems, the warnings regarding hard-coded strings have officially gone away. Let's run our app real quick and see how everything turned out. I'll enter a name of test in the name input field. That looks fine. Now if I click on the say hello button, nothing happens. We're missing the listener. We'll need to add an event listener for this action to register. Let's go to our main activity Java file to implement this. As you can see, we have some default generated code for our onCreate. Let's grab the name plain text input by its ID. It's showing up in red. This is because we have yet to rename our screen component IDs from their defaulted values. Navigating back to the layout editor, we can update the ID to whatever value we want. In this case, we can put something like name text or name text input. Now we see the resource highlighting presented in purple rather than red, but the error squiggles are still present. This is because it cannot find the symbol or variable being referenced on the left-hand side. Let's finish renaming the component IDs first, as we'll need to register listeners for the text changes and button clicks before being able to update the greeting. Within the class definition and before onCreate, we'll create private instance variables for text greeting, name text, and the button. Now that all the squiggles have been resolved, let's complete the initialization of the variables. We'll then need to add a text watcher to detect changes found with our name input. Now that it is defined, attach the text watcher to the name text input. I'll add a brief note for us to revisit the button state based on the state of the name text input here. Now that we have this taken care of, let's go ahead and define our sayHello function. We'll want to first validate against empty entries ahead of printing something. We can print something by setting the text of the text greeting component and doing a simple string concatenation as an example. You may find some duplication here. Let's resolve this. We can extract the value retrieval to a local variable called username and use it for both the check for empty values and to set the text greeting. As you can see, sayHello function is grayed out. This means it is not being referenced anywhere. Let's attach it to the sayHello button's onClick attribute in the layout editor. Alright, time to see this live. Let's run the AVD. I'll enter in a name of Android and click on the button. Sure enough, now we see the once empty text show Hello Android. And if we try again with the name Little Tim, we do see the value change. Let's lock down the button by whether the user has provided text in the name input field. In other words, let's disable the button if nothing has been entered. In our main activity Java file, we'll set the sayHello button's enabled attribute to false, just before our text watcher. And within the text watcher's onTextChange function, we'll have it toggled based on the Boolean output of whether or not the string is empty. Now we can remove this to-do from here and rerun our AVD. Now upon startup, the sayHello button is disabled, as you can see it's grayed out here. But it is immediately enabled the moment there is a valid text present in the input. And there we have it. Next, let's add some testing. Now we have an example instrumented test present with the auto-generated files. If I click on Run next to that Use App Context Test, you'll see some resources downloading on the right. This is normal since we are just running the sample test for the first time. Now, not much will break unless we change the test contents, and it passed. All right, let's add some entries of our own. We can start with the use case of when the button should be disabled when the text input is empty. So let's say on the view with the ID name text, check if the text within is unchanged. In this example, we'll use a string matcher function called textUnchanged, and we'll implement the methods. The IDE will auto add the things required for this for us, so no worries there. Let's update the description text so we know what's going on there, and let's add the check for the button being disabled. Now, let's just say this as on the view with ID button say hello, check if the button is not enabled. All right, let's run this real quick. Yup, it failed. Let's see why. No activities found. Okay, we certainly skipped a step. At the top of the test class, let's add an instance variable called activity rule of type activity scenario rule and rerun. All right, test failed again. In this case, it is using the default text value. Let's update the matcher to account for this and rerun. There we go. Our first passing test. Let's fix the name real quick and move on to the next. Now this next test will be our happy path, where the user enters something in the input field and the button is enabled, allowing us to see the greeting upon clicking the button. So let's say this as, on the view, with ID name text, enter the name Arthur. Now we can check for the button being enabled. So on the view with the ID button say hello, check if the button is enabled. Oops, we have the wrong import. This should be allowed. Let's fix this real quick. There we go. Okay, next we simulate the click in the test. So on the view with ID button say hello, perform click. All right, and finally, let's confirm the text greeting shows up. So on the view with ID text greeting, check that the text matches hello Arthur. I'll add a comma purposefully so it fails the first time. As you recall, we did not add a comma in the greeting composition. Let's run this real quick and yep, it failed, but not for the reason we think. The placeholder text name is being added to the user's input. We never cleared it upon the user entering in the field. Let's fix this real quick. Let's go back to the main activity Java file and set the string to an empty string when the user clicks on it. We can do a quick manual test using the AVD. Yup, upon the user tapping on the input field or the focus being on that field, the placeholder text disappears. That's exactly what we wanted. Now if we run the test again, over here, it passes. And there we have it. We have our first 2 tests for our app. There are plenty of other things that can be done here, like importing libraries for string handling, third-party component libraries, testing libraries, you name it. It's very possible this was just a very simple walkthrough of a Hello World app with some high-level testing. And that's it for this video. Until next time, happy coding.